Have you ever heard of Krampus? Now imagine a winter's eve, the Peterson family arriving at their remote cabin. Mike, the father, is wrapped up in a cocoon of work calls and emails, his attention far from the present. Emma, the mother, attempts to bridge the gap, her efforts to connect with Mike met with distracted nods. Their children, Charlie and Sophie, exchange looks that carry an unspoken understanding of the tension simmering beneath the surface. The frost-kissed air is heavy with anticipation, the cabin standing ominously silent against the backdrop of the moonlit forest. As they unpack their holiday decorations, they stumble upon an ornate box, long forgotten in the dusty confines of the attic. The box, old and mysterious, promises stories from a time long past. Little do they know this box holds more than just old trinkets. And as they unpacked, an ornate box from the attic would soon change everything. A dusty old book buried under decades of forgotten items caught their attention. The Petersons, in the midst of their holiday cheer, were drawn to a peculiar find. Hidden beneath the attic's detritus, an ornate box lay untouched, its age evident in the layers of dust that had settled on it. Inside, they discovered a relic of the past, an ancient book, its cover worn, its pages yellowed. As they flipped through, a chilling illustration emerged. The figure of Krampus, the Christmas demon, leered back at them, an eerie testament to forgotten folklore. Alongside it, an incantation, written in an unknown language, wound its way across the page like a cryptic serpent. Disconcerted yet intrigued, they pondered over the strange text, unaware of the unsettling turn their holiday was about to take. As the day wore on, odd occurrences began to punctuate the serene atmosphere of the cabin. Lights flickered intermittently, casting an eerie glow that danced on the cabin walls. Laughter, disembodied and chilling, echoed through the empty hallways, and whispers of an unknown origin seemed to rustle through the rooms like an unseen breeze. Yet the Petersons dismissed these eerie happenings. They attributed them to the creaks and groans of the old cabin, the whispers of the wind, and the tricks that shadows played in the flickering light. They continued their holiday, the mysterious book and its ominous illustration pushed to the back of their minds. But as night fell, the odd occurrences grew more pronounced. During a cozy family dinner, the power suddenly went out. The room plunged into an unsettling darkness, the only sound being the crackling of the fire. Then, a growl echoed through the cabin, low and menacing. The family froze, their laughter dying on their lips. The warm glow of the fire cast long, dancing shadows that seemed to take on a life of their own. And then they realized they were not alone. The cabin was not just filled with their own holiday cheer, but with something else, something darker. The figure from the ancient book, Krampus, was more than just an illustration. He was there with them. But as the lights flickered out over dinner, they realized they were not alone. In the shadows, a figure lurked, a monstrous silhouette they'd soon come to know as Krampus. The Petersons, huddled together in the dark, felt an icy chill sweep through the room, far colder than the winter's night outside. The flickering candlelight did little to keep the darkness at bay, and the shadows seemed to dance and twist into menacing forms. A low growl echoed through the cabin, a sound too primal, too predatory to be human. Suddenly, a flash of movement in the corner of their eyes. A brief glimpse of a horned figure, a chilling creature from the very pages of the ancient book they had found. The room fell silent, the only sound the family's own heartbeat thudding in their ears. Krampus had made his first appearance, a terrifying specter that would soon become all too real. The cabin, once a refuge from the winter's chill, had become a hunting ground. Krampus, the ancient punisher of those who strayed from the path of virtue, began his game. He wasn't there just to frighten. He was there to exploit their deepest fears, to magnify their darkest secrets. Emma, once a strong and confident woman, found herself plagued by visions of a past mistake. A guilt she had buried deep within, now brought to the surface by Krampus's cruel games. Mike, always preoccupied with work, was faced with the consequences of neglect. The cold isolation of the cabin mirrored the emotional distance he had allowed to grow between him and his family. Meanwhile, Charlie was forced to confront his resentment towards his parents. His anger, once a simmering ember, was now a raging inferno, fueled by Krampus's relentless torment. And Sophie, the youngest, was faced with a terrifying, distorted version of her innocence, a grim reminder of the harsh realities of the world she was yet to fully understand. As the family members found themselves alone, each had to confront their past mistakes and fears. The cabin had become a labyrinth of self-reflection, a mirror reflecting their deepest insecurities and regrets. But in the darkness, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption, for reconciliation, a chance to face their fears, and perhaps to defeat the monster that lurked in the shadows. In the midst of chaos, young Sophie made a surprising discovery. The ancient book they had found in the cabin's attic, it was not merely a collection of old tales and illustrations. It held a deeper significance, a purpose that could be the key to their survival. Sophie's fingers traced the worn edges of the pages, the cryptic symbols dancing before her eyes, and as she delved deeper into the text, a realization dawned on her. The book was a guide, a manual of sorts. It was a tool to appease Krampus, the menacing shadow that had been haunting their once serene getaway. But how does one appease such a creature? The answer lay within the very heart of the book. It was not about grand gestures or heroic deeds. It was about acknowledgement, about facing their own faults and flaws. Only by accepting their past mistakes and seeking atonement could they hope to quell Krampus's wrath. Mike, ever the workaholic, had to learn to prioritize his family, to understand that there were things more important than work. Emma had to confront her guilt and find redemption in acceptance. Charlie needed to recognize and appreciate the sacrifices his parents had made for him. And Sophie, she had to find courage and wisdom beyond her years, to become a beacon of hope in these trying times. The power of the book was not in its age or its mystique. It was in its ability to inspire change, to force them to look within themselves and address the issues they had long chosen to ignore. It was in the way it brought them together, uniting them in a common goal. Each of them held the power to change the narrative, to turn their fear into strength. They just had to acknowledge their shortcomings and strive to make amends. As they each grappled with their demons, a sense of determination filled the air. They would face Krampus. They would survive this ordeal. Armed with newfound understanding, they prepared for a confrontation. In the looming darkness, the family prepared to face their fears. The Petersons, stronger now and united by a common purpose, braced themselves for the inevitable confrontation with the monstrous Krampus. The tension was palpable, the air thick with a sense of impending doom. As the monstrous Krampus loomed, each family member faced their own personal struggle. Mike, his phone now insignificant, grappled with the reality of his neglect. Emma was haunted by the ghosts of her past mistakes, the echoes of guilt resonating deep within. Charlie battled his resentment, re-evaluating the sacrifices his parents had made. And Sophie, the youngest, faced a terrifyingly distorted version of her innocence. But they were not powerless. In their hands, they held the ancient book, its cryptic incantations offering a glimmer of hope. The book, they realized, was a key to appeasing the Krampus, a tool to acknowledge their misdeeds and seek redemption. With the monstrous figure of Krampus bearing down on them, they began the ritual. The words, strange and ancient, filled the room, their resonance seeming to push back the darkness. The family each in turn confronted their darkest secrets. They voiced their regret, their guilt, their resentment. They acknowledged their flaws, their mistakes, their shortcomings. They asked for forgiveness. As they spoke, something remarkable happened. The shadows cast by Krampus began to recede, the monstrous figure itself seeming to shrink. Their voices, sincere and true, were having an effect. The Krampus, the embodiment of their worst fears and regrets, was being tamed by their honesty and their courage. The Petersons, standing together, faced the beast. Their voices rose in unison, the words of the incantation echoing around the room. And then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, Krampus retreated. The darkness lifted, replaced by a soft, forgiving light. With genuine sincerity, the Petersons faced their darkest secrets and asked for forgiveness. Their confrontation with the Krampus had brought them together, forcing them to confront their flaws and seek redemption. And in doing so, they had found something far more valuable than they could have ever imagined: unity, understanding, and a renewed sense of family. As the shadowy figure retreated, a soft light bathed the cabin. A sense of unity, stronger than ever, began to weave itself around the Peterson family. Their hearts, once burdened by guilt, resentment, and fears, now pulsed with newfound strength and understanding. Mike's phone lay forgotten as he held his family close, his thoughts no longer imprisoned by work. Emma, her guilt replaced with acceptance, smiled at her family, her eyes clear and resolute. Charlie, maturing beyond his years, embraced his parents, his resentment washed away by understanding. And Sophie, the youngest, stood taller than before, her courage shining brighter than any Christmas light. In the face of fear and darkness, they had not just survived, they had evolved. They had confronted their deepest fears and emerged victorious. The true meaning of Christmas, they realized, was not in the gifts or the festivities, but in the love and unity that binds a family together. Forever changed, the Petersons had faced the darkness within and emerged stronger. So what do you know about Krampus now?